Order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I think. Maybe closer this way.
Okay, FOIA publication notification's been sent. We have meeting minutes from the meeting of June 3rd. Are there any amendments to that? Without objection then, the minutes are approved. Agenda is before us. I have a couple of action items to work through. Any questions about approval of the agenda? No? All right, so we'll move forward. Okay, this is the portion of the meeting where citizen comments are permitted that do not pertain to the issues that we're going to be discussing under action items. So anything that you generally have wanted to talk about, you've got 3 minutes to do that. Do we have any citizen comments not related to the agenda items tonight? No, okay. Hearing none, then we'll move on to the action items. I'd like to ask the commissioners, if I could, if we could reverse the two items, 8 and 7. I understand there's been some subsequent correspondence from the applicant on item number 8, requesting a deferral, and I think we can take care of that in short order. Any problem with that? Any question, comments? If none? All right, we'll start with action item number 8, consideration of an ordinance amending the zoning map. A number of pieces of property mentioned here located on Okatee Highway from T2 Rural to T2R neighborhood mixed use C3. Applicant would like to come forward and request the deferral formally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Barry Johnson. I'm a attorney here in Beaufort County for some 52 years now. I was raised in Beaufort, and back in the late 70s, it was my privilege to serve on a predecessor of this board. Back then, it was a joint board with Port Royal and the city of Beaufort, and I appreciate your service. I think each of you has received a copy of the letter that we sent out, I think on Thursday after receiving the staff report on Tuesday last week, and I don't want to belabor the time, but we do need some time to work through with the county staff on some of the issues that we see that may be substantive, and we appreciate the commission's consideration of deferring us over perhaps till the September meeting.
You wanted it to September, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that meeting is September the 5th.
All right.
It's the Thursday after Labor Day, not the 9th as was in your letter, so it's
All
the
right.
5th.
September 5th. I'll make
Yes.
a note of that.
All right, with that said, can I have a motion to approve the deferral until the September commission meeting?
So moved.
So move. Do I have a second?
Second.
Glenn, second. All right, all those in favor of that motion? Raise your hand. Opposed? Okay. All right, the motion passes for the deferral. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for being here. We'll see you in September.
Yes.
The other action item on the list is a consideration of an ordinance amending the Community Development Code, Section 3.1.60, Consolidation Use Table, and Section 3.3.50, Regional Center Mixed Use C5 Zone Standards to allow dwelling single-family detached units in Regional Center Mixed Use C5. Kristen?
Let me make sure I have the right one. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to jump right into this one. So this proposed amendment seeks to permit single-family residences within the C5 Regional Center Mixed Use Zoning District. The current standards do not allow for this use, which has created nonconformities within the county, specifically north of the Broad River. The current standards allow a full range of retail, service, and office uses. And the proposed standards would allow a density of 2.6 units per acre, practicing consistency with zoning district C3. And then I'm going to run through all the criteria. So is consistent with and furthers the goals and policies of the comp plan. Yes, the amendment is consistent with and furthers the goals. Strategy H.1 recommends to develop policies for the appropriate location and quality of affordable housing. Let's see, a crucial aspect of this of affordability involves promoting infill development, which is attainable through this amendment. Additionally, the built environment core value number 4 of the comp plan emphasizes the ability for landowners to profit from their land. Presently, numerous C5 properties are designated as non-conforming and feature small lot patterns. The inability to build single-family homes on these lots diminishes equity by restricting property owners' choices and investment potential. So it is not in conflict with the development code. However, to continue further consistency, it is recommended that zoning district C4 is also amended to allow single-family detached dwelling units as well. And then addresses demonstrated community need. Yes, many properties, zone C5, are non-conforming and/or are platted purposefully to hold single-family homes. There exists a small lot pattern curated of low-density housing that needs to be considered. It is not required by changed conditions. Is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zones in this development code. Yes, C5 zoning district's purpose is to contain mixed uses. Adding single-family detached units furthers this purpose. And then 6 would result in logical and orderly development pattern. Yes, this would allow particular neighborhood-compatible development, especially along Paris Island Gateway. So if you look at your screens, those are a lot of the those small lot patterns that were brought up. So I did want to point out it is essential to recognize that the market will not sustain expansive traditional single-family neighborhoods with 2.6 units per acre on extensive tracts along major roads, which a lot of these are located on. And then the last one, it would not result in adverse impacts, and then the regular, they have to adhere by all of the code in the stormwater manual. And at the end, recommendation, staff recommends approval. And then if you want to show just what would change. So I didn't want to go over this. So TCP is struck out. It can still be allowed in TCP as it is now. We just wanted to make it the same as it is with C3. So right now C3 has allows it in a TCP and allows it permitted, just as a permitted use. But to make it uniform on the chart, that's why it's stricken out, but it's still allowed there. Let's see, so then go down. So building height is the same, 2.5 stories max, and then all other buildings will stay that they're 3 stories max. Gross density is the same as C3, which would be 2.6 dwelling units per acre maximum. And then other buildings will just stay the same. And that is all. Any questions? Sorry.
Questions? Yeah, John.
Kristen, I had a couple of questions.
Me too.
First, I know I haven't been doing this very long, but typically when I see a case come before us that involves a text amendment, it's usually staff that's the applicant. Who is?
Yeah, so
This
we do
particular
have an applicant here. So, and she is one of the landowners of one of those parcels that I showed up there. And this is because right now she's not allowed to have a single-family home on that parcel that was specifically curated to house single-family lots.
Okay. thank you.
Single-family homes, sorry.
Really, the only other, I guess, broad question I had was, for me, the C5 zoning district seems to be a pretty unique zoning district. If you look at kind of what's in our toolbox. And that I had always interpreted its understanding to be, when you talk about regional center, it's really the only place where we're providing for large box,
Yes.
commercial and high density, high intensity
Can you
land
pull up
uses.
the zoning map? GIS. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's definitely what it's intended for. There are just a lot of outliers that we've noticed specifically in that area. I don't know the background of why they were zoned that way.
So I guess maybe that was my question, because it looks like in terms of where we've applied C5 in the future land use, it's pretty limited in terms of when you take into the entire county where we're saying we want that type of development.
Yeah.
And my initial reaction is, would someone who lives in a single-family detached house really want to be in a position where something much larger, much more intense can be developed
Yeah.
next to them? So I guess I was just wondering, are there other tools other than allowing for this to be included in C5 that include either downzoning those outlying lots or changing the language in the nonconformities to allow for this type of use in those locations,
Yeah.
rather than kind of a blanket change to C5 and potentially
Yeah.
C4?
I'm going to let
Hey, John.
Mark answer that.
So, yeah, no, it's
Can
a
you
great
come-
question.
Can you come up here, Mark?
Sure, yeah, I'm sorry.
So if you're gonna want details on it, you're gonna need her back, but this is more high level.
So, it's a good question. So when we get these things, and you have, obviously, there's the map, and this is the general area where you have the C5. And so you can see that a lot of those old lots, what it was is as those things, and they were platted, those lots were created, and they primarily probably had single-family homes on them. Then the zoning of the C5 came afterwards, on top of them, creating a non-conforming scenario where we said, hey, you've got these existing single-family lots that were platted. As you can see, a lot of them are single-family. And then we're gonna put C5 zoning on it, essentially rendering you non-conforming moving forward, because we think the long-range plan here is this is gonna redevelop, and these single-family uses will go away, and then somebody's gonna come and buy all of these lots and make them one big lot. That's the planning mindset. In my experience, that rarely happens. The reality is the existing land use pattern oftentimes stays. Sometimes it does happen, economics drive those things. So here we have a situation where you've had this C5 zoning here in a lot of these areas, and it really hasn't done much to these lots. They're still there. Maybe turn the aerial on, that will help. You're gonna have primarily the original way they were platted and used still in play, even after all of these years. Give it another 40 or 50 years, John, and maybe that could turn over and you might get some of that stuff. But in the meantime, you have people here who own these lots who still are making a choice. This isn't a requirement. We're simply saying in C3 you have the choice. In C5 you can also have the choice based off the application that was submitted. Doesn't mean they have to do it. It's just adding it in as a permitted use. Therefore, if somebody comes to our zoning department and requests a permit to put a new house on one of them, they can issue that permit. Otherwise, right now, they're saying, no, we cannot issue a permit on your land because of the zoning. So we could look at doing an exercise on looking at lots and rezoning and all that. We find that text amendments sometimes are just a good, quick fix, and just say, look, that's great, here, take it. You can have it as a use, therefore it's just another option people have. We're adding an option in there. Long range, I see your point though, the area has been identified for a redevelopment for these larger commercial elements, but it hasn't happened. It could happen over time. And then those life cycles of those buildings will kind of determine that. And that's kind of the economics of those things. So we like zoning, we like land use, we're in the business of it, but we don't want to choke people out. So we try to find in-betweens, and I don't think staff really took much concern of simply taking this use and making it allowable in C5, just so people could have the option. And that goes to what Kristen and Rob were saying, is that It's already allowed in C3. The application received for C5, so what we're saying is, to make it uniform, what we're suggesting is that the recommendation come with, well, why don't we just make it C4 too? So it's C3, C4, and C5. So it's just all the same across the board. C3, C4, and C5 allow single family as a permitted use, and they all have the same standards. So that's kind of where staff landed on it.
And I certainly understand what you're saying, and in my mind, it makes perfect sense for those existing small lots to be able to provide those property owners with that option. I guess my concern might be too strong of a word, but I think about, well, what about the existing large lots where you're much more likely to hope to attract the type of development you anticipated, but someone comes in and says, I want to put a single-family detached subdivision there. It's not about developing a single lot, it's about developing.
So I think, so again, anybody can do that. If the use is there, somebody would be allowed to do that, if somebody came in and submitted that. But usually the economics, when you're near major infrastructure and you've got the zoning there, where this, we would think that somebody would be more driven towards the existing lots. You're allowed very high-level multifamily residential already in C5. So if you've got those larger lots, usually what we see in those is they're not doing the single-family developments. The economics aren't there at a 2.3 dwelling, what was it, 2.3? 2.6. That's just, economics aren't there on the single-family in such a high, when if I can go do apartments. If I've got water and sewer and I've got infrastructure, I'm doing apartments. That's just the economics of that typically. Or you might get some mixed use. You might get some apartments along the front, you might get some duplexes, and maybe get some single family towards a little bit in the back. But it could happen though, John. I mean, but I would say usually the economics drive that. If somebody comes in and says, I've got this large parcel and I'm gonna develop C5 zoning at this density because this is just what I wanna do, they could. It just usually they go for the higher dense product if infrastructure is there to serve it. If infrastructure is not there to serve it, then you might get that lower dense product.
How many non-conforming lots are there at the moment?
So it's not so much, so there's two things on nonconformities. Nonconformities exist in two ways. You can have a nonconforming lot, which means the lot itself, the physical space of the lot doesn't meet the standards of the zoning district, but then you also have nonconforming use.
Well,
The
that's what I meant.
okay. Well, I mean, I don't know if staff did a specific count on how many of them are all residential, but I mean, if you can zoom in, you can see that's a whole area, that's all C5 and it's all up and down. So I would say you've got a lot. Can you turn the zoning back on? I mean, you can kind of see it there, but a lot of those in there, I mean, you can really see in that pattern, kind of more on the, I think along that line. On the left side, I think you got a lot over there. You got some of the larger parcels, if you kind of go back a little bit to the upper right, and then on the other side, you've got a lot of the parcels again. So, if this was, if this was a comp plan exercise and the county was then gonna follow it with reestablishing new zonings, like when they did this back in 2014, we might look at possibly, is the zoning properly done? And, that zoning could be there, planning commission initiate rezonings. But that's a lot. That's a lot of work. You do that kind of stuff. Where the text amendment, just to add it in as an allowed use, doesn't cause planning department's heartburn.
That's what you're saying.
This is precedent setting in C5, correct? So
I'm sorry?
it's precedent setting. It's just, they're gonna set a precedent for the applicants in C5. So I would imagine around the county, how many areas do we have that are C5?
There's not a ton. I mean, I think that's part of the study y'all looked at, is you kind of really looked at how much really C5 was around, and it's not a bunch. There's a couple clusters. You can see go ahead.
That was like can y'all hear me? That was the main thing that helped with this is look at North of Broad, the main area where C5 is, you hone in on it, and most of those are made up of these lots. And
Some
then
down in Vermont, yeah.
we saw a little bit,
I think a lot of it's along 278.
Mhm. Yeah, you can see it's like more linear there.
and then,
prob-
sorry.
No, go ahead.
So go ahead.
Well, then there, I think that's where that's gonna come in, because it's the way the shape and the linear of those along 278, you're probably gonna see more at your intended redevelopment parcels, some of your larger box, commercial-driven type of development. But even there, you're probably still gonna get a couple stragglers there with some of the smaller lots that are still gonna have some possible residential uses on them. Again, it's just an option of a choice, and, land use law and zoning and all those rules and regulations are good for a orderly development, but we always try to find that balance of when we might be unnecessarily, unintentionally preventing people from using their land, and we try to find those balances, and, that's where just allowing it as a permitted use, it's not, might get probably a few of them at most. How about this? I don't think we're gonna get a rush of C5 single-family permits over the next, couple years because of this text amendment, but I could be wrong.
I have a question.
Sure.
Under number 1C1, your comments.
Hold on, bring those up. You might need.
Is
Chris back
consistent
on
with
this.
and furthers the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. You used the rationale of H1, developing policies for appropriate location and quality of affordable housing. This is an attempt to promote affordable housing? I mean, why did you tie it to that issue? I mean, that is a critical issue to us in the county.
Yeah, well, it mostly had to do, whenever we looked at this, as an equity issue of people having these, would you say that it's been in your family for a while? So it's more of an equity issue that we come across of keeping families where they are. You put C5 right there, and they want to add another home, they can't, which creates affordability, so that way you can keep it throughout your generations.
But I
So
don't,
it's not a way to create crazy affordable housing, but it definitely hones in on families, generational
Staying in place,
housing.
yeah.
how about this? Supply and demand. A new house comes in, that's one more house.
It's affordable.
That helps it all make it affordable. You got one at a time.
Well, I'm for that. Other questions?
Just one more, sorry. Did you, by chance, look at Article 8 and whether or not there was a text amendment language to address this as part of a nonconformity issue rather than changing this land use under C5?
Yeah, so the nonconformity is there, but at the end, if it's not a permitted use, it doesn't matter. So you wouldn't be able to permit something. If there's a lot there, you might have a non-conforming use. The use is there. You might have an existing home, it stays there, it's grandfathered, it can stay there. We're not going, if there's a house on there already, we're not telling people, you can't, you got to shut this down. That's just an existing non-conforming grandfathered situation. But on lots where you have existing vacant lots, where they're trying to introduce a new home to that lot, if it's not a permitted use, the zoning department cannot issue a zoning permit. The nonconformity wouldn't apply at that point in time.
But that's just under the current language. You couldn't do
Yep.
a text amendment under non-conforming lots to say in a condition where you have a
It's a use,
small lot
though.
that you could.
It's a use. This is a use. We're introducing a use. The lot itself would be a separate issue. That's why you have non-conforming lots and then use. So this is gonna be follow more on adding a use group in. Like adding the use in of single family. You guys didn't tinker with the lot requirements in there, did you? Yeah, okay. So it would be introducing the use. So I've never seen anything where we've gone under nonconformity or grandfathering to introduce something as a use that's allowed within a specific zoning district, because that applies to all zoning districts. So this is just, we're trying to apply it to this one. Just what's allowed in C3, what's allowed in C5, but I think where they went with it is if we're gonna do C3, we received an application on it's in C3, just do the same standards for C5. It wouldn't make sense, if you didn't, none of had context and I was reading it, I'd be like, well, why isn't it allowed in C4 if it's allowed in C5? That wouldn't make sense. So that's where staff just said, we might as well, throw it in C4 too, if this is considered something that the county would like to do.
Okay. Further question. You're recommending the zoning district community center mixed use C4 also be amended, but it doesn't show that on the diagram.
That's right, because this is an application that we received. That was not a part of it. So what we're saying, though, is that as a part of this discussion and as a part of this stuff, staff's saying, just while we're in here, we would say it'd probably be good to consider it as just the same thing. It'd be the same language, we're going under C4, be the same standards that you see in C5 as a change.
Okay,
It just-
but you didn't change it.
No, staff did not do that, because that would have been a combination of kind of like an application received versus staff received. Now, if this was a staff-driven one, lots of times we'd have just gone in and done both.
So that won't go forward as a change.
You can make it as your part of your recommendation.
Further questions? Thank you, Mark.
Mhm.
I see a number of folks from the public. Are any of you here to talk on this issue? No? Okay. All right, any discussion amongst the regarding this application?
Are any of y'all here for the rezoning that came? That was, okay.
Yeah. All right, for discussion amongst the commissioners? Comments?
I just want to ask John, I think I'm following your line of thought, and maybe you didn't.
Excuse me, are we gonna allow the applicant, or do y'all have any questions for applicant?
Well, it was a staff recommendation. I didn't think the applicant would.
Okay, I was just making sure if y'all had any questions, but, okay. Just procedurally, just going through this.
Did you want the applicant to add to this comment?
Well, I'm not sure if anyone here knows what that property looks like, but.
I'm sorry, ma'am, could you come up to the podium and give us your name and address?
Sure, my name is Rhonda Bryan. I'm the owner of the property in question, and that property is seated, and I didn't even realize it had gotten changed to commercial, but it literally has nothing but homes and mobile homes sitting adjacent to the property. There are no businesses whatsoever near that property. So I'm just trying to get that changed. I have no desire to put anything on the property, but if I'd like to sell that property, right now, anybody who wants it wants to put a home there. So in order to make it easier for me, that's what I'm trying to do if I should decide to sell that property. So, but just so you understand, there are no businesses in that area, just mobile homes and a couple of houses. Nothing commercial whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
John,
Ms.
did you,
Bryant, I'm sorry.
John had
She has
a
one
question.
Sorry. I was just, so do you own multiple lots that are on the
No,
street?
I
or
own
one?
that lot.
Which one?
I own 9 Horton Trail. I can give you the R number on it if you need that.
I know it's one of these.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. That's all
Okay.
I need to know. I appreciate it.
Or no, it's over here. Okay.
So you're back to you.
Yeah,
Back
so,
to your question.
I just wanted to ask John, I want to make sure that I'm processing this in my mind correctly. You're looking more towards future vision. Is that kind of what the main bulk of your questioning was, is not just what we're here to try and help this young lady out here with, but vision as the county moves forward and what could possibly happen with those lots?
I mean, I certainly understand her plight, and
I
I
do
think
too.
there are some other ways that we could address it, including rezoning her property to allow for single-family detached. In some ways, it feels like by changing the text for all C5 and potentially all C4, we're a little bit of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Same thing I was just thinking, yeah.
Yeah, Why
If I-
wouldn't the county get involved in downzoning the property? So that
Downzoning just one property,
No, all of the property in the area, if there's no commercial there now, is that,
that could be part of something that y'all wanna look into, but that's a lot. I don't know I don't know the reason why.
okay, all right, just propose that, if that's an option.
As I'm understanding this thing, they're asking for the change on the use, permitted uses.
Yes.
So we have a class, C5, where certain things are allowed,
Right.
and they want the ability to be able to add single-family homes to it. And looking at the map, it doesn't look like it's a huge portion of Beaufort County. It's just that little strip along 278 and this section right here. So, looking out 50 years or something, it's not like, you know, a developer's gonna come in, razz it and put up, you know, whatever he wants to put up. It's still gonna be a permitted use in C5. So, you can go this way or, you know, do it piecemeal style. Piecemeal style will take forever because each individual property owner would have to make a, you know, an application for it. So I'm not sure, I don't have it in my head either, which
But I get
is the
what you're
better way to
saying.
go.
Right, I
But I
understand.
understand what you guys are saying.
Right, right. Okay.
Just throw that out.
No, I heard you.
Acres. So, okay, let's take this one for example. So this one is back here. 10.69 acres is this one. So with just by density, not taking into account anything with stormwater or anything, this right here would be able to have 27 homes in this big old thing. Let's see. So if that's, I'm just like addressing your concern about a huge development. A lot of these aren't that large to have these grand single-family home developments, my opinion. To really do much, that's much of a concern. Just put that in perspective.
Yeah, I guess my issue is that we seem to be encouraging more complexity in the area. Single-family homes, commercial, retail, mix. And the question is, you know, where's the greatest need for the county in the use of the land?
Yeah.
And if it's more toward single-family detached homes and affordability and equity for the existing homeowners, that we'd be better off moving that direction than trying to just add one more use.
Yeah, but like we discussed, like the economics of it, you have this property right here. I mean, it's not even, it's residential vacant. There's nothing on it. And like their plans, I guess, were to be residential. Like economically, it's not sound to make any of these single-family neighborhoods. You would use that for its C5 use. So it's just, I just wanted to emphasize that part. Could someone? Yes. Would they be making enough money to where they would want to do that? No.
We had an applicant about 5 or 6 months ago that was looking to put in affordable housing, but it was brand new. It was changing the zoning,
Yes.
and we ended up turning that down
Yes.
because it
Right
didn't
on
fit with the
278.
comprehensive
Yeah.
plan and all of that.
In
So
OT.
to the point about, does the county still need affordable housing? The answer is still yes. Is this a way to do it? Or not? You know, which is a better way to going? We blanket C5 with a different use, or have her put just her application in just for her property and let all the other property owners, you know, fend for themselves? Because this is the kind of information that just gets out to the public.
Yeah.
Somebody could, oh, look what he did, I can do it now too, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and the flip side of that, I think, is other than C4 and C5, I think virtually all of our other zoning districts, you can build single-family detached.
Yes.
So in terms of opportunity for development of affordable housing, I mean, it's essentially everywhere except where the comprehensive plan has said this is where we want to put our high-density land uses. And I guess my worry would be that someone goes in on these existing small lots, puts a single-family house, and then next door to them, somebody builds a much more intensive use that's allowed under the C5, and you've created an incompatible situation because we've allowed
was my
for.
A Jiffy Lube next
Right.
to the house.
Right.
yeah,
That was my
yeah. Something,
concern.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, because we had something similar to that 2 months ago where the boat guy wanted to build his boat rehab spot right off there in
Yes.
Ladies Island. Right, that was near a lot of residential development, and a lot
Yeah.
of folks there did not want that in there.
Yeah.
And obviously it was shut down because of the zoning.
It's actually in front of county council.
It's already
It's
C5,
long.
it's already allowing commercial.
We're just the front of the Ladies Island, it's just the front of the lot. it's not the
Yeah.
back.
Right.
But this one is already C5, so it could in fact put other commercial type enterprises there.
Right.
So the question remains, do we allow the use,
Yeah,
single-family
yeah,
detached
that's the use,
for a
yeah.
C5?
That's-
And
that is
they're
the
recommending
question.
also for a C4.
I mean,
Anybody
I
wanna
admit,
make a
I don't
mo-
have the answer, I just wanted to show a different side,
Yeah.
that's all.
But if I'm not mistaken, I thought I heard him say that these landowners are, right now, they can't do anything with their property. They're not permitted to do anything, so we're preventing them from benefiting from the use of their property. So, to me, it sounds like this text amendment would help them to be able to use property that would just sit there. They're not gonna have a big box company come in and want to buy up enough of the single-family homes to put something there. They're stuck. I mean, they're paying taxes on something they can't utilize.
Good point.
That's right.
Further discussion? I
I don't know if it's to our benefit, because I certainly appreciate what you're saying, Gail, and I've said all along, I think we need to address this issue of these existing plotted lots that, for whatever reason that we still don't know, got zone C5. I just don't know if it would benefit us to have a little bit more time to work with staff to find out if there are in fact other viable options than just the one that we've been discussing today.
And to go back on what we were talking with earlier, Gail, I do appreciate your point, and I do appreciate what the young lady out here is wanting to do, but I think we're also chartered to have vision as far as where the county goes, to look forward, so that we don't have a piecemeal approach to people, just like Glenn was saying about having a Jiffy Lube here and a house here. We want to be able to protect these people's properties as best we can, and I think I'm also leaning towards, we may want to relook at this and see if there's something else that we can do that's going to be beneficial, so these folks aren't hamstrung by the current zoning. But we need to do something, and I'm not sure this is it.
Come forward, please.
What, I'm just coming up, just to talk to you guys, are getting any questions, or you're gonna take a vote, or I'm not sure?
I guess I'm curious as to, on these lots, how many of them are currently
Well, that's why I was
active?
asking the
Looking
earlier
to
question,
put
how many
homes
of
on
these
them.
are there?
Are we
If it's a-
doing this because one person wants to sell it because they can't build a home on it? Or is there a majority cause there that want to put homes on them? Or is this all for just one lot?
Is that a question?
Yeah, it's a question, yeah.
Okay. I can't answer that, because I don't know, because what we know is that we have a process where somebody can apply for a text amendment. We received an application for a text amendment, and staff went through its evaluation and did its normal stuff and provided a staff report. We showed you our hands, we played our cards. It's in your all's choice whether or not you want to make a recommendation to go with the application or not. Or you could table it, and you could say, come back to us with language for C4 as well. You could kind of go and look, there's other options. I don't know of any other options between, if we're talking about uses, like we're establishing uses. Uses are established by zoning districts. So you either would have to introduce a use or remove a use within a zoning district, or you would have to change the zoning. Those are your two tools. The zoning is there to go in and individually take applications from owners one by one and rezone these is way more complicated than simply allowing a small P in the zoning district. And if over time, it becomes issues that we believe are a concern, then we can address it versus possibly perceived issues at this time. We do have an issue that we know for a fact. This lady wants to put a house on her lot. That's a real issue we've got right now in front of us, and we might think that could be some more in the future.
Well,
So we got a real issue versus perceived issues.
correction, she never once came forward and said she wanted to put a house on the lot. She said,
Oh.
I want the lot to be able to have.
you want the lot to be
Hold on.
able to.
Well,
I
here
may not put a
How about
house
this?
on that
Do you
lot,
want to hear from the
but I
applicant?
want that to
No, we
happen.
did, we did.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Do we need more information?
I think we do. I think we're being asked to make a decision based on one.
But if we're gonna say we need more information, what information is it
Yeah,
that we
you're gonna have
need?
to give us direction
And that-
for staff to come back
Yeah,
with
I
something
mean,
else.
One would, to me, would be, what's the percentage of C5 for the entire county?
Okay.
Is it less than 1%, 0.5%? Then we're not really making a big decision here about a really small piece of land as it relates to the entire county.
It's not a lot.
You know what I
But
mean?
if
I know
you-
it's not a
yeah.
lot, but, you know, what exactly is it?
We could, I mean, if you want, if that's what you want, we can come back to you, we can work with GIS and come with specific examples of acreages of approximately out of the entire county acreage, you know, or lots, we could say it's C5 encompasses approximately this much of the land.
Okay, we're not being asked to change the zoning, we're being asked to change the permitted use. That's the
Yeah.
difference.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
I'm very, very sympathetic with people being able to use their property. And that are particularly, they have their property, they're paying tax. Gail hit it right on the head.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't wanna put them in a position where somebody just, we're gonna put a single-family detached house here, and suddenly there's a Jiffy Lube next door to them. I mean, it's, it seems incompatible to
And lots of
create that
times,
kind
the
of
lots
situation.
themselves drive that, like the shape of the lots, because a Jiffy Lube's gonna need so much acreage, or just larger commercial, so
Well,
sometimes that
Dunkin'
drives.
Donuts, I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
Dunkin'
places that are
Donuts.
really.
Well, I mean,
little drive-through.
that's what mixed use is.
That's what mixed
I mean,
use is, you know?
it's a mixed-use district. I think,
Yeah.
I think there has been, you know, if you look at the history of zoning and land use, that we thought taking uses and separating them out was the best way to do it, and that existed for a while. And then we started thinking that maybe we should start integrating the uses a little bit more and more and more. And that's what transect zoning does. And then in our C districts, which are conventional districts, it did kind of stick to that more Euclidean approach of separating those uses out. But if we're gonna take those approach, then why don't we look at all of our transect zonings then? Because we've got that problem in every single transect zoning, which is about 90% of the county. If we're gonna start talking like that.
Well, but there are design standards
There
to
are.
address those mix of
Absolutely.
uses so that they're done in a compatible fashion.
Yes, sir.
Just out of, and I apologize for being so ignorant, when would the C5 zoning have been applied? Was that years and
20
years and years ago?
I think this zoning exercise was done in 2014, is when they rezoned the county and did the transect zoning and then identified your C3, C4, and C5s, which was your conventional kind of zoning. So they did not go to the transect, they kept the more Euclidean kind of conventional zoning districts. That was kind of more your scaled, lower kind of apartment uses up through the heavy C5, which is your heavy commercial users.
So do we know how, because I know Ms. Ryan said she had no clue that her property had been rezoned to
Most people
C5.
don't. Most people, these are exercises going in. So again, you go through these exercises of planning and comp planning. We go through these exercises of zonings and zoning rewrites, and you do everything you can at a high level. You don't, it's not like we're granular getting down on the ground. And so this was a situation, I guess, and when that was probably occurring back in 2012, 2012 through 2014, where the county said, hey, look, they were probably having conversations on whether it should be transect zoning or it should be conventional zoning. And, I mean, Ed, were you on the, I mean, was anybody on the planning commission back here? Help me out, it's not, okay. But so, you know, I'm just going through an exercise of probably what occurred, and then they said, no, let's just keep this a conventional district, and you can see all the C3, that's the yellow. And they said, hey, we've got all these roads here. They said, hey, let's draw our borders here, C5. And that's how this stuff lands. And it was probably, they kind of looked at it and tried to do their best they can on a parcel level. And they thought that it would be a good area. Obviously, you can see there's a lot of municipality land that would probably annex over time. So that was it. And so from that time, I guess over the past 10 years, we go look at those areas and see how much they've transformed with that particular zoning during a very healthy, probably one of the best 10-year runs this country's ever seen in an economy. And there's definitely some development. I don't think it's transformed a tremendous amount. Some road improvements, probably some right-of-way acquisitions, intersections. So this kind of comes into is does the zoning that was laid there over those existing single-family uses in those lots and rendering them, the uses non-compliant, was that a good exercise? And that's the conversation we're having. Was that a good exercise? Or did it go a little too far by not allowing, if we allow apartments in there, we're allowing resident, going back to this, it already allows residential uses. So we're already allowing people to live next to places where we have this stuff. All we're saying is we're introducing the residential use of a single family, because there already are single family uses allowed.
So if that process was done, say in 2012,
I think it was adopted in 14, I think, if I
What-
recall.
what prevents us from today going back and saying, we made a mistake and this swath, we're going to rezone to whatever is appropriate?
Nothing.
Why is that more complicated? Because you would sort of couch it as.
Well, I
saying
think
we
it's,
have to
I think
get every
yes, that's an
individual
exercise. So
property
we'd
owner to come
probably,
in.
we have we'd have our comp plan update. We would look at the comp plan, of course. We always look at the comp plan. We always look at future land use plan, and that's probably what they used to drive some of these things back when this was done. They established a zoning. We just had a new one that didn't really tinker too much with things. We will have a 5-year comp plan kind of in between the 10 years. You can start looking at it then. You can do them on the 10-year. But if the county was to do, or the planning commission was to do a planning commission initiated rezoning, then we would have to start doing some, kind of area studying and look at these things and kind of, does it meet the comp plan? Then we kind of get into that stuff. It's a longer process. It'll cost the county more money, probably bring in some consultants. It's not to say, John, that it's not a planning exercise that can't be done. It's just more time consuming and it's more staff heavy. But I would say if you guys are interested in some of that stuff from these issues, when we bring them up, when that 5-year comp plan mid-cycle update comes, these are some of the discussions that you all could be having.
It's coming soon.
It is.
next
It's gonna be
year.
here, I think it's next year.
Yeah, next year.
So these are the things that we get these things in between, exactly. So we get these things in between, we have these discussions, and we kind of land on these things every 5 years of what do we want to look at, and look at these kind of more of a broader range planning exercise.
Okay. We need a motion, either to reject it, to ask for further study, look at some options.
To me, it sounds like we need a little bit more information, so I would like to make a motion that we defer this and for another month and hopefully get some more information from the planning department.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
We're gonna need a lot more clarity than that.
Specifically, what information, additional information
You're
are
gonna
we trying to get?
Tell us specifically what you're gonna want in addition to, between the application we received and the staff report we have provided, specifically what additional information, because this is what we're gonna need, so that we can bring back to you, so we can have a productive meeting next month.
Well, you said something about an area study around that
Okay.
area?
So that's one,
That's one.
okay.
Percentage of C5 to the entire county is the second one. Anybody else come up with anything else? Or, this is just a motion that hasn't been seconded yet, so.
Well, take it to discussion.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in whether there are any other options, particularly for non-conforming, properties for these people so that they can, you know, stay in their home and then they can also sell it, even, because it will be conforming. Is there an option to make that happen without putting a special use in C5? Or an additional use?
I can answer that now. I would, I mean, we would probably have to dig deep, but I've never seen that law, I've never seen it down in a zoning code. And just to confirm, it's not a special use, it's just a
No,
permitted use. We're just
no.
trying to make it a permitted use in
Yeah.
the zoning code.
Motion withdrawn.
Okay?
I tried, folks.
Well, do you want to make a motion to approve?
I motion that we approve Ms. Bryan's applicant for a text amendment.
That would include the C4 as well, which is recommended?
Yes.
I'll second.
Okay? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Okay, it's 4-4, 3 against. Motion passes.
Yes, okay,
That's the
4-4.
recommendation.
I was like, what?
Yeah,
We're good.
okay. Oh, anybody feel a little comfortable?
That was tough.
Yeah. All right, I think that was a,
Yeah, it is.
that was our second action item. I don't have anything to report especially. Anybody have any other burning issue you'd like to discuss
You got it.
before we adjourn? Okay, without objection, the meeting is therefore adjourned.